Don Shaw. I'd like to welcome you to lucky episode 13 of Friending the Mirror. Today we have a guest who's going to talk about beyond surviving, thriving after a burn injury. And my guest is Barbara Quayle. I'm really happy to have Barbara here. I found Barbara by contacting the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors. Barbara suffered a burn injury in 1977. Her own recovery process instigated a deep interest in the aftercare programs for burn survivors, and eventually she became involved with the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors. She has served on the organization's board of directors. She focuses her efforts and expertise on creating and putting into play a variety of school and community reentry programs for burn survivors, which also work well for people who have other forms of physical alterations. So, Barbara, welcome to my show. I'm so happy to have you here. Could you just start talking about, could you tell us about what your life was like before you had your burn injury?
Good afternoon, Dawn, and on behalf of the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, thank you for including us. Before my burn injury, I was a junior high school teacher, and I taught English and journalism and coached a girls' tennis team. Although I was not a great tennis player, I really loved the sport. I was single at the time, and I just had a very full life and enjoyed all the activities that one would living in Southern California in the Orange County area. My life changed abruptly, however, when I was rear-ended by 3 illegals who fled from the scene of the accident and offered no assistance. Fortunately, rescue units came, and they were able to get my boyfriend at the time out of the car. They didn't see me inside, and a passerby who came to give assistance at the scene saw me through a break in the flames and literally pulled me across the council out into the street and saved my life. Although I must say that first year I was not exactly happy about being rescued. We were immediately transported to the University of California, Irvine Medical Center in Orange, California, that has a burn center, and I was hospitalized there with burns on my entire face, top of my head, my arms, my back, tops of my knees. And I was in the burn center for 2.5 months, having some reconstructive surgery on my face. I had the fingers on my right hand amputated. The other hand, you can see, is pretty misshapen. I was really very devastated. The pain that people go through in a burn center is kind of indescribable. We have to have these tub baths every day during that time. You were given morphine as the drug, but often people felt like, are you sure you gave me any morphine? Because in those days they were sort of afraid we would become drug addicted, and so we did not get probably as much as was going to really take away all the pain. So it was a dreaded process every day, along with the dressing changes that were necessary. In my burn, I lost the nostril on both sides of my face, and it was, really shocking. I did not see myself, though, before I was discharged. I had seen a reflection at one point in some glass, and it frightened me so much that from then on I avoided any kind of reflective surface, any kind of mirror. And it really wasn't until the day that I was discharged that, talk about facing up to it, I looked in the big scope of a bathroom mirror and was absolutely stunned, because I looked like something that Hollywood made for a horror movie, and I was my identity that I had in my mind of how I looked was nothing like appeared in the mirror. And I don't know if you can show that first shot of how I looked after discharge.
Actually, I'm trying, but for some reason, Webinar Jam has decided not to give me that option right now. But
okay, well, we can come back to that. That's not a problem. And so after I saw myself, I went running and screaming and crying out of the room in really kind of disbelief that this was how my life was, and I couldn't imagine that things would ever get any better. I thought my life was totally over. And that was the beginning, I always say, of really my healing, both emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually.
okay, I am able to show the picture.
Okay. And during that time, it was hard to come sort of face to face with that reality. And then, along with that discharge and wearing the big white thick mask that I had to wear, I really started facing the challenges of what it meant to recover from a burn injury.
So what does the mask do?
The mask, that area from my face from here to here had been grafted, from about my nostrils to the middle of my forehead had been grafted. The lower part that's very red and scarred was that scarring was going to try to be controlled with a pressure mask. But what the masks and the pressure garments do is afford uniform pressure on the area that has been grafted or has scars, and you wear these garments or the mask 23 hours a day, 7 days a week, for a year to a year and a half, depending on if you're having surgeries in between. They're hot in summer, even in Southern California. They are tight. I needed, when I was discharged, to have a nurse come to my house every day to help me get them on, particularly off, because of the zippers and the tightness of them. I hated them at the time, but boy, I am very glad I was diligent in wearing them, because I think they helped with, my recovery. And some of the challenges that I had during that time, I really realized were a lot of social challenges, because you can imagine the stares, the startled glances, the double takes, the whispers, the pointing, the intrusive questions that people would ask walk right up to your dining table in a restaurant or in a store. People somehow lost their courtesy boundaries or their common sense. And I knew that I had to learn to manage some of these social situations that happened in grocery stores or restaurants or in church and theaters, and meeting new people. And I quickly learned that people, pardon me?
I was just going to ask you, what was your support system? What was your support system like while you were going through all this?
Well, while I was in the burn center, I was very fortunate that I had a lot of visitors, from my friends to my colleagues, even some of my students. And then after discharge, of course, my family, and my colleagues and my friends continued. The man I was in the accident with had been my boyfriend for a few years, and about 5 months after, he decided that he wasn't ready, he wasn't willing, and he wasn't capable of, and just didn't want to support me through this whole thing to the end.
So was he injured in that accident?
He was minimally injured. He had a burn on his neck, and burn on his neck, a little bit on his scalp, and a little burn on his hand someplace. Because he was rescued more quickly than I was, so his burns were less severe. And, you know, it was just the reality. And although I was, my self-talk at that time was, you'll never have anybody love you again. You better remember all the fun you had dating and parties and so on, because your life, social life, is over as you knew it. And that was really a huge psychological, emotional challenge for me to get past that, to learn to accept who I was, maybe, and that might be my reality, and be okay with it. It took a couple of years to get there.
Did you get there?
And then, you know, when I started to go out to different, you know, venues, to a restaurant or lunch with somebody or go to the grocery store, I really always wanted to have a buddy at first. And all my good friends, my friend Judy and Linda and Dee Dee and just a myriad of wonderful people were there for me to face those experiences. But what I learned was that people were as uncomfortable and scared of me as I was with them. And somewhere along that, I learned that I had to put them at ease first. And that's where I kind of learned some skills, or figured out some things about, you know, my self-talk was, I can do this. And that if I, you know, started with, you know, looking people in the eye, smiling at them, had a friendly, you know, sort of relaxed tone of voice, stood up straight, didn't, you know, act hangdog, that people sort of settled down and they could relax with me and realize I was acting as if until it became real actually. But I acted as if I was comfortable with myself, then they could be comfortable with me too. And that was really the beginning of steps: the self-talk, tone of voice, eye contact, posture, and smile, which I hadn't put together yet, but that's how that came about.
Yeah, and I totally understand that, because I know that with me, I hear about so many people who look different, who get the stares, who get the looks, who get the rude comments. And to be honest, I don't. I mean, I have had my face look this way all my life, so maybe I've developed a filter. But I also have come to realize that part of that might be attitude.
Absolutely.
Because of how I don't expect people to treat me differently, so they don't. And it's, for me though, like I say, I've had almost 49 years to get used to it. So
yeah. I mean, I think it is a lot of attitude. And I have a friend who said, if you act like a victim, people are going to treat you like a victim. And what you do with your body and your voice and your eye contact says, I'm a victim or I'm a survivor and a thriver, and I'm comfortable with myself. And we who have a facial or body difference have a lot of responsibility in how people respond to us. It's not all them out there. It's a lot to do with us and our expectations. You're absolutely right. After my discharge, I continued to have a lot of occupational therapy for my hands. I had a surgical procedure that my hand was all one sort of fused like this, but then they created a grip area, which enriched my life profoundly, because then I could write right-handed again. I could, do zippers and buttons and just a myriad of things. So that was really important. And then, I had a lot of facial reconstructions, especially on that lower part, and my nostrils reconstructed by the chief of plastics at the time, David Furness at UCI Medical Center. And he was really quite a person in that he was my partner on the journey, and really listened to what was important to me. And I'll be forever grateful for him, giving me my life back. So after all of those reconstructive surgeries, I was still wearing the garments, and it was time to go back to teaching because I was a single woman. I had to work, and so, and plus I wanted to be teaching again, and that was a huge and important step. I'm so glad that nobody ever said the D word to me, that you're disabled or you could go on disability, because I think it would have made me a victim. And although I was terrified to go back to 6 classes of junior high kids who didn't know me, I knew that I had to do it. I didn't have a choice.
Barbara, we have a question just come in from, and he's asking, how did the medical bills affect you? How did you deal with the financial end of it?
Well, at the time, I was a teacher. I had a great insurance, and so the insurance, got to remember this is 30 plus years ago, so we didn't have to deal with things like we do now with insurance, and my insurance was fabulous in helping me through that crisis. My school district, the District of Anaheim, were behind me all the way. They were incredible in that way, yeah. So when I was going back to school, there wasn't really any help from the burn center or the school district or my school about how I should tell the kids or what I should do. And so I flew sort of by the seat of my pants with it, and because I was wearing the pressure garments from head to toe. I don't know if you have a slide like that you could put up.
I do.
Okay, and so what I did that first week of school is tell the kids all about the car crash, the burn center. Most didn't even know what a burn center was, and the surgeries I'd had, ones I would continue to have for the next few years at Christmas break and summer. And then I gave them the opportunity to ask me any question and every question that they wanted to know, and they asked away, and nothing was off limits except my age and my weight. And so what I discovered down the road was the whole thing of self-disclosure and how important that is, and the truth shall set you free, and it certainly did. And they became my spokespersons out on the campus when other kids went, who's that woman? Why is she wearing that mask? And so they were sort of Mr. and Mrs. Big at the time, because I was their teacher. And none of the things I feared, like parents wanting to have their kids taken out of my classroom, or kids wanting to go out of my classroom, or calling me names as I crossed campus, those things never happened. And I think I would attribute it to that self-disclosure. And that was my ticket to freedom. And yeah, it was, as I said,
That's really important.
I just flew with it, and it turned out to be a great tool.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's really great, because I think having your kids stick up for you, I mean, who are they going to listen to? They're going to listen to other kids. Mm-hmm. And when somebody, because you can bet, beyond a doubt, that things were being said.
Yeah.
Your students were coming out and saying, well, this is what happened. and don't talk about her like that. I mean, they become your best defenders.
Yeah, they were. They were advocates. They really were. And the Phoenix Society, since all this, has, a fabulous online program for school reentry that's available to healthcare professionals, teachers, parents, to be able to design a school reentry program for children. And anybody with an anomaly, cleft lip, cleft palate, any other trauma anomaly or birth anomaly, could go on and glean things that they might learn from that. When it was time to graduate from the garments, which was probably about a year and a half more, or a year into it probably, there was another challenge about how I looked, because my face really was like a little patchwork quilt. And I wanted three things. I wanted my skin all one color. I wanted to have some eyebrows again, and I wanted a symmetrical lip line, the things that most of the folks walking around in the world have. And it was really tough to find somebody to help me, because there was not much out there, even in the Los Angeles, beauty mecca where I was close to, had very few people who were able to or ever wanted to work with somebody like me. And I found a person, Aida Gray, who's since deceased, who was an enormous help. And she gave me my start in how to do this. And the kids, I was so scared, because I thought, oh, the kids are going to go, oh, Miss Camera, is that all the better it's going to look? Oh, you still don't look very good. But their response was so lovely, in that they said, oh, I bet you're so glad to have the garments off. And, oh, I'm glad. I mean, it was nothing about how I looked, just that I must be happy to not have them on anymore. So that was a great thing. And the creative cosmetic portion was really a great tool and a great aid for community reentry. It reduced the questions, the stares, and the comments, and all like that. And again, the image enhancement and creative cosmetics is an online learning program of the Phoenix Society on their website. So anybody with any kind of facial difference or body difference can go online and watch it and learn step by step, and create an image that they're happy with. When I was teaching, I really began looking at what we didn't have in burn centers, and the lack of support, from making sure that people see their faces before they're discharged, to helping with school reentry, having a burn support group. And so I was able to get a grant from the Weingart Foundation in Los Angeles to begin the first school reentry program for burn injured children in the state of California, and so served all the burn centers in LA County, Orange County. And so out of that, one of the hospitals that I served a great deal, Rancho Los Amigos Medical Center in Downey, wanted me to come on board after my grant was up, and I worked there for 10 years. And during that time, they were a fabulous facility in that whatever I could think of and what could get funded and was going to benefit patients, I could create. And one of the things that I did create was an image enhancement program at the hospital, so that it was available to any kind of trauma and scleroderma, alopecia, any of the pediatric children as well, and of course burns. And so that program, then I started teaching nationwide before it became a Phoenix Society program. And so then the other thing I really realized was the behavioral skills, the social skills that help somebody, such as the STEPS program, your self-talk, tone of voice, eye contact, posture, and your smile, as well as a tool for answering intrusive questions. It's a 3-sentence response that you can find on the Phoenix Society website. A staring tool to know how to respond when somebody stares rather than act mean and angry and so on about it. And so that was a big step, and I owe a lot to Rancho during that time for allowing me to do those programs. And during that time, I also met Amy Acton, who was a burn nurse from Grand Rapids, Michigan, who eventually became the executive director of the Phoenix Society. And we were of one heart and one mission in terms of making life better for burn survivors. And another of the great programs that the Phoenix Society has begun is SOAR. SOAR stands for Survivors Offering Assistance in Recovery. It's a standardized national program available in any of the 120 burn centers here in the United States, and is currently in about 70 burn centers across the nation. And we have hundreds of burn survivors who've been through this training so that they can go in to burn centers and talk to survivors, their families and friends, and give support, encouragement, motivation, inspiration to others in, getting back to life. And that is really the motto of the Phoenix Society, is getting back to life, so that people become go from victim to survivor to thriver. Another of their amazing tools is, of course, the Scullery entry program, and that is available online. They also have a World Burn Congress that's done each year. This year it's in October in Indianapolis. And World Burn Congress is really something. It gathers burn survivors and their families and friends and burn care professionals from all over the United States, as well as other places in the world. And the Phoenix Society partners with another burn center to do this conference every year. And it's a 3 or 4 days. And it has changed people's lives within those 3 or 4 days. People who thought there was no hope, that they were isolated, they were the only ones. I've seen people who maybe wore shirts up to here and sleeves down to here for 25 years, all of a sudden come in a t-shirt, where their sleeves show, or go swimming in a swimming pool with other survivors at the conference hotel. On Wednesday evening, there's a chat line that every Wednesday that's moderated, that people can log into. They can just type in things, or they can, have that information. And it's a great support thing. There is also Burn Support Magazine, which is published quarterly and offers a lot of information and resources. There is also a scholarship program called PEG, Phoenix Education Grant. My husband Ken and I started it in about 2002, and another company called Allosource out of Denver, Colorado, has been an enormous contributor and support for the PEG scholarships. And this year we are going to be reading through 42 applications, and we won't be able to fund them all, but we will try to fund as many as we possibly can. So it gives kids a leg up, because there's nothing. They've had, a lot of families have had a lot of financial strain during a time of a kid's burn injury, and this really gives kids a leg up. They could go to college or they can go to a trade school. It doesn't have to be a 4-year university, but it can be a training program as well.
Hey, Barbara, I'm going to jump in.
Yeah, please.
Jump in for a second. So, a couple of things for people who are watching, and we actually have quite a few viewers. So, welcome all of you. Happy to have you. I want to tell you, if you have a question, go ahead and type it in the chat, and I will see it and I will convey the question. So, by all means, keep in mind there's a 30-second delay. So when you type the question in, you might not get an immediate answer. And that also might be because I'm kind of facilitating and I don't always see the questions right away, but I do promise you your question will be addressed. So the second thing I wanted to bring up is, Barbara, you mentioned you have a husband, Ken.
Yes, every Barbie needs a Ken, as I always say.
Oh, good.
So,
anyway, so I wanted to, this is an opportunity to.
You know, I was pretty sure that the last boyfriend was it, and then I really started kind of thinking differently, because I had friends who were, beautiful, who maybe weren't married, and I had girlfriends who were average looking. Of course, I thought they were beautiful, and they had husbands. So I realized all of a sudden, well, maybe it didn't have anything to do with how I looked, but who I am inside. And so I tried to start working on a better Barbara, if you will, and I changed my conversation to, I am a lovely, wonderful woman, certainly worthy of a loving and caring marriage. And it's not like I had tons of dates, but I had a few nice quality boyfriends. And so Ken and I have been married 25 years this year, and we met. We lived in the same condominium building, and we were basically acquaintances that turned into a friendship, that turned into a love relationship, that turned into a marriage. So I think it's really important to realize that many people who have burn injury get married, men and women. Women have children, and there's some wonderful families that come from that. So that's my love story. I think one of the most...
You've been married longer than I have, actually.
I'm probably older than you are, but we won't go there today. I think one of the most important lessons that I've learned is that when we have a facial or body difference and we want to go and do something new, or everybody isn't used to us, whether it's joining a gym, which my friend Linda, I went kicking and screaming I didn't want to do that, and she was my buddy, and I learned that it takes about a week for people to get used to you, and then you're no longer a big deal. You're just one of the people at the gym, or one of the people at this, playing a sport, or at the church, or at a club that you belong to, or whatever it is. And if people can just remember that, it makes it a lot easier, because people have to get used to you. They have to, had to get used to, I was wearing the mask and everything when I joined that gym. And I was terrified, but it helped to have a buddy. I will say that. And then I got comfortable and I could go by myself.
Okay, Barbara, I have another question come in. Okay. So I'm going to read this to you. This is from James. And James writes, Barbara, thank you so much. I met you at WVC and on your visit at JH Bayview. I am SOAR trained, which I love. I also just got back from a kids burn camp counselor in PA, Pennsylvania, I'm assuming. This year at WVC, I am going to be a crew leader for the You Belong program. My specific question is, how do you deal with stares? When people stare at you, what do you
Okay,
do?
well, all right, I'll tell you. At first, I was very uncomfortable. I'd look away. I'd mostly look away, try to hide. Some people react by, "What are you looking at? Mind your own business," and those kinds of comments, which leaves you just feeling angry for hours afterwards. What I learned by trial and error is that if you use your steps, your self-talk, tone of voice, eye contact, posture, and smile, and look them in the eye and speak, whether it's hi, because maybe that's all somebody can muster. How you doing? Isn't this a beautiful day? How about those women soccer team from the USA or whatever? What happens when they hear your voice and they have the eye contact with you? As is that there's a spell that's broken, and they see you as a human being, not as an object anymore. And sometimes I've had a conversation out of that kind of an experience. Sometimes I don't. They just go on about their business. But for we that have a facial difference, it makes all the difference, because what you realize is that you're capable of handling these stares, and you're doing it in a nice, gracious, kind way, not with anger and a terrible response. I always say, too, that when we respond in a less than gracious, courteous way, are also representing other burn survivors. So if I act like a jerk, then sometimes people will say, "Oh yeah, those people with burns, leave them alone. They are nasty critters. They're just mean, ugly people just because they've had a burn injury." And I don't want people to think that about all burn survivors or any burn survivor. So that's how I handle stares. Stand
Well,
up straight, look them in the eye, and speak.
I'd like to jump in for a second because I wanted to say that I agree totally with what you're saying. I will actually invite, especially small children that I catch staring at me, I will invite them to ask me what happened to my face in a polite way. And
Mm-hmm.
then when they answer, because once they know, I'm not interested anymore. They just go around about their business
Yeah,
and yeah.
they just want a simple answer, right? Yeah.
So David Roach, who is actually a friend of mine as well.
He's a friend of mine too.
Anyway, David is actually going to be the guest on my next webinar. So
Yeah, I read that.
David says hello, and he wanted to say thank you for your wisdom and for being a guiding light to him in the past. Do you have a spiritual or religious practice that has sustained you in all these years up until now?
Well, it has evolved. When I first had my burn injury, I was raised as a Roman Catholic. I was a lapsed Catholic, if you will. However, I had a lot of family who really prayed diligently for me, and a lot of my friends, relatives, and friends did too. It wasn't until much later, several years after my burn injury, that I started thinking about faith again and about God, and how God orchestrated so many good things out of this, tragedy. And I eventually have gone back to Catholicism. I'm a practicing Catholic, and I think that faith for me is very important in my life, and I really want to do as much as I can through these programs for the glory of God. not me nor anybody else. So that's kind of my faith story in a nutshell.
Already, now you wrote a
I
book.
know David was a practicing Catholic too.
Yeah.
If you've read, if you've ever heard him speak, it's quite a story.
Yeah.
I'll tell you next week.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get to that at the end of the show, but yes, July 20th, Monday the 20th, David's going to be my guest. So please join us because he's just a great guy and he has a lot of wonderful things to say. Like Barbara and like most of all my guests, I have great guests on this show, and I can actually prove that because all of my shows are archived. You can find them on YouTube. You can find them through the webinar page on my website. But I don't want to take away from what Barbara is saying. So I'm going to jump back to Barbara. And Barbara, tell us about your book.
Well, I'm writing a memoir with a co-author, and we are in the editing process. And so we're hoping that we'll be able to get it published by the end of the year. I don't exactly have a working title for it yet, so I can't give one to you.
Well, you wrote a book.
It changes all the time.
You wrote a book, though, that the Phoenix Society is.
Mm-hmm. I have a small manual that's called The Book, in caps, of Image Enhancement for Burn Survivors. It is available at no cost through the Phoenix Society. And so you could call them or go on the website and get the number, and they would send you a copy of it. It has a DVD with it as well, but I don't think the DVD personally is as good as watching the online learning program on the Phoenix Society website. This many years, have passed. I think the website, Creative Cosmetics, online learning is a bit improved than the DVD is.
All right, so what programs are you working on now? Tell us about your current programs.
Well, one of the things that I do at World Burn Congress is, along with Anthony Gonzalez and Mona Kruger. Anthony's from Chicago, Mona Kruger is from the Portland area, both involved in their burn centers, Portland Burn Center and Loyola. They partner with me doing a workshop on surviving, skills for surviving and thriving after a burn injury. And we will do that at World Burn Congress. It's a 2-hour workshop held on the Wednesday. And then Thursday and Friday at World Burn Congress, I will be coordinating an image enhancement program where anyone can sign up, come in for an hour or so private one-on-one consultation with a trained esthetician, many from the Society of Plastic and Surgical Skincare Specialists. So it follows a medical model. And so I'm kind of busy with those two things at World Burn. I also help the Phoenix Society with some of the SOAR trainings, training the survivors at various burn centers across the United States, and that's kind of what I'm up to.
That's excellent. So real quick, I just want to invite people, if you have more questions, by all means, please ask. This webinar will be available online afterwards. You'll automatically get the link for registering. Please, by all means, share it. If you have questions, comments, whatever, after the fact, we are both accessible. If you send questions to me, I'll make sure they get forwarded to Barbara to the appropriate place for you to get an answer.
I can always be contacted through the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors.
Yep. So there you go. There's that avenue. It sounds like that whole organization is just a phenomenal resource, not just for people who have burn.
The Phoenix Society really is the only national organization for survivors and their families, but also serves a great asset for healthcare, burn care professionals across the United States, as well as some of the burn foundations, the individual burn foundations. They're a very open organization, and they help beyond just what I'm talking about, with you today. They're really something.
Well,
their headquarters is in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yeah, I was actually a little confused at first. I saw
a lot of people think it's in Phoenix. I know. Phoenix, the symbolism of the bird in the ashes, and coming through more beautiful than before.
Yeah, I did eventually figure that out, the whole phoenix metaphor, but I have to admit it took me a little while. I confess I can be a little slow.
Well, the founder of the Phoenix Society, his name is Alan Breslaw, and he began the Phoenix Society in about 1979-ish, like that, and ran it as a small organization and did a great deal. But we have so much technology now that when Amy Acton began with the Phoenix Society in about 1986, I think, it changed immensely because of what we could do in terms of technology. And Amy Acton is also quite a visionary and a can-do person, as well as everybody on that staff. They have an amazing staff, and if anybody's looking for where to put some very good donation money, it would be there. They have a very small administrative costs, and they do a tremendous amount of work with the small amount of money that they have. I mean, you can see the plethora of programs that they're able to do.
Okay, so James wants to know if makeup classes apply for men as well.
Makeup for creative cosmetics, yes, we do. We don't see a lot of men, but yes, we're able to work with men. And if you look on the online learning, I think there are also some photographs of a few men that we've worked with through time. So yes, we do work with men as well. Women are predominant, of course, but yeah. And with men, what we don't do is, full makeup. Men basically want to have a little of the redness taken down, so that community reentry is so much easier when you have kind of basically one color skin, and men have a ruddier skin complexion a lot of times than women anyway. So we just put it very lightly to take it down a little bit. Some men just want to use it, maybe when they go out with their families or a special occasion, and we show them how to do that. Yeah, it's available for men and women and teens and kids.
One important aspect to consider is how it makes people feel about themselves. I mean, I make a personal choice not to wear makeup, but then I'm not dealing with the discoloration and whatnot. I mean, my face is half paralyzed. That's just the way it is and the way it's always going to be. So makeup doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, I understand.
do agree with anything that helps. If it helps,
it's an aid. It's a tool. It helps. I'm 100% know that my life wearing makeup, or just having my skin one color, some eyebrows on, some symmetrical lips, reduces the amount of questions, staring, double takes, whispers, and so on. Now, on days when I don't want to do very much, sometimes I wear a baseball cap, covers my eyebrows. I'll put a little blush on, give me a little color, and a little bit of lipstick, and I go.
Yeah,
so wear it all the time, but but I know that people treat me differently. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say I have trichotillomania, which is I used to pull my eyebrows, and I've managed to pretty much overcome that. But I will confess that is the one time that I would wear makeup was to fill in my eyebrows.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I'd be walking around with half an eyebrow.
Yeah. Well, which brings me to another point. There are many survivors. I didn't happen to go this route, but some survivors do and like it, and it's quite successful, is using the permanent tattooing. But my caveat would be find somebody who has had lots of experience and know up front that if it's on a grafted area, it will maybe last a year to a year and a half, two at the very most, probably. And some people have their lips done, so they don't have to deal with lip color all the time. But you do have to have it, you have it once, but then you have to keep retouching it through the years. And I just happened, it wasn't very popular when I was burned, or I don't even know if it existed, but, and then I've been approached by people that wanted to do that for me, and I just somehow said, I'll do it myself.
So,
but it is a great option.
Okay, so basically, before we close the show, I do have one question that I ask all my guests, and I realize that you've talked about a lot of different things on ways that people can help themselves. But if you had to pick one thing that you would convey to somebody, maybe a burn survivor who has a self-esteem issue, who hasn't quite figured out how to make that reentry successful, what would be the one piece of advice that you could give them to start making their life better, to improve their situation?
Well, I would say go on the Phoenix Society website and look at all the possibilities for growth, for support, and for resources. The other thing I'd say is if it's around this time of year, start thinking about going to World Burn Congress. We do have some scholarships, they're never full scholarships, but we do give some assistance with the registration and so on, and hotel and transportation. Those two things, I would say, will jumpstart your recovery, because I've seen people come to World Burn down, down, down in how they thought their lives were, and at the end, they were really inspired, changed, and they went from victim to survivor. And maybe it'll take another bit of time to get to thriver, but they were on their way, and I just can't say enough about that organization and what it has achieved for people.
Well, and I think one thing that really helps people to understand is you're not alone. I know
Yes,
when I was
that is absolutely so, and that's the beauty of the SOAR program too, is we train people that may be able to Skype with somebody, to go by telephone or email with a burn survivor who lives in a remote area in their state. When you think about remote areas like Wyoming or Utah or Montana, or even here in my home state of Arizona, it is a big help to be able to connect with somebody else who knows and can relate to what you've gone through. Not maybe exactly what you've gone through, but they've had that experience, and they can listen to you in ways that other folks can't.
Yeah, the phone chats. I know with the facial difference community, we have phone chats a couple of times a month that connects you voice to voice. Social media is really important. I was going to ask if the Phoenix Society had a mentorship program, and your answer seems to be yes, it does. I also want to convey that there's a couple of people that have posted, and James wants to say thank you and that he'll see you in Indianapolis. And Grant wants to thank you for sharing your life experience. Allie says thank you. She works at the Shriners Burn Hospital for Children in Galveston, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
and she's going to take all of your words of wisdom and share them with the kids there. So I just want to convey that people are definitely appreciating what you have to say. So do you have any final thoughts, words before I go ahead and close the show?
Well, I guess what I would say is, you know, don't give up. Know that there is help through the Phoenix Society, and sort of work on the inner you. I mean, that is where the recovery comes. It's an inside job. It really is. And I really appreciate everybody listening, and God bless you in your journey.
Yeah, thank you so much, Barbara. It's been fantastic working with you ahead of time, and fantastic to have you on the show and share all these wonderful pieces of advice. Because honestly, I may not have had a burn injury, but the message is, it's when people are physically different, it's we have similar experiences.
Absolutely.
So it's important for me to share, and it's so accessible to so many parts of the community. So anyway, I just want to say, I know I've mentioned it before, I'm going to say it again. My next webinar is Monday, July 20th. Usually I do these on Tuesdays, but I always try to accommodate my guests. So we're at Monday, July 20th at 12 noon. I'm very pleased to have David Roach, who is an inspirational humorist, motivational speaker, author, and performer who has transformed the challenges and gifts of living with a facial difference into a compelling message that uplifts and delights audiences around the world. So please join us then. I also want
David has been to World Burn Congress as a speaker as well.
I'm sure he has. He's amazing. So I want to remind people, while it's important to be kind to other people, don't forget to be kind to yourself. I am author and professional speaker myself, Dawn Shaw, and I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us.
We are loved, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other, nothing more. We are how we treat each other, nothing more. We are how we treat each other.